To better understand our course theme, the governance of difference, we chose a council housing block near Angel as our object. Bletchley Court is managed by Hackney Council, and we imagined it as a synecdoche of council housing in London and state-sponsored housing more generally. In the aftermath of World War I, there was a housing shortage in London. The Housing and Town Planning Act of 1919 was enacted to rectify the crisis and was the origin of British council housing, in other words, public housing administered by local councils. The construction of council housing exploded in the aftermath of World War II, when Bletchley Court was constructed. Through reconstruction as well as slum clearance, many people were rehoused. These new housing blocks broke up established communities and new demographics emerged among residents. Today, council flats are more likely to be rented by individuals of lower socioeconomic statuses. They're also more likely to be rented by Black residents. In terms of age, white residents are more likely to be younger, while other than white residents are more likely to be elderly. London council housing is an example of how, across time and space, empires have used state-sponsored housing as a way of governing differences in their populations. Implicit in the provision of shelter, a fundamental human necessity, is the power to regulate spatial relationships and social hierarchies.
This is evident in the Qing Empire, which used a banner system as a way to control the state's military power. The state provided banner officials and soldiers stipends and property grants, consisting of land and housing that was exempt from tax and rent. By rewarding the soldiers' loyalty in this way, the Qing court successfully created a designated social hierarchy. To better control the metropolitan bannermen, the Qing government chose to resettle them and garrison sites separated from the metropolis. For example, in 1742, the Qianlong Emperor relocated the bannermen from Beijing to Lalin, a state-owned site southeast of Shangcheng. By providing these landless bannermen with land and housing, the state ensured them a means to earn a basic income and fortified the state-sponsored hierarchy. Another similarity between London council housing and Qing-sponsored housing exists in the distinct visual disparity between government and private housing. Bletchley Court is perpendicular to a row of whitewashed townhouses, contrasting sharply with the redder council flats. The inverse, in terms of statues, could be observed in Weiyuan, where the differences between Imperial Han and native Thai neighborhoods were planned prior to the cultural blending of the 19th century. The point, in both cases, is that housing was a visible reminder of differences between various populations that the state had power on.
Both the Ottoman and Russian empires present examples where they used their power over housing spatiality to exert control over their respective populations. They often enforced hierarchies of difference in terms of gender, religion, and ethnicity, and each used space to partition certain groups within the empire. For example, in imperial Ottoman households, spatial difference of the harem was visually epitomized in the masharaba. Harem women were essentially provided with a specific space within imperial housing, which would be monitored and where complex social hierarchies were developed and sustained by imperial involvement. There are ties between the Ottoman harems and council housing in that both are occupied by particular social demographics, circumstances which stem from state practices. Additionally, controlling access to space is also a shared trait. At Bletchley Court, the recreation allotment was locked, suggesting that what is meant to be a common space is in fact inaccessible to those that live there. Russian examples of this are found in their attempts to control non-orthodox autonomy and practices, the destruction of mosques and conversion requirements for Muslim princes to keep their titles in the Volga region are specific actions carried out by the Russian Empire. And in the Russian Empire, various populations for various reasons were resettled in the southern and eastern reaches of the empire, away from the imperial center. Giziga, for example, was a remote military base and barracks in the northeastern frontier of the empire. This outpost was for many elderly soldiers a sort of retirement plan, because many men did not have alternative housing after their service. In those barracks at Giziga, they functioned as housing provided by the state. We can see the overlap in age and social demographics, which are also characteristics of London council housing residents.
The provision of housing has been used across empires both to accommodate for and to entrench difference. The creation of living quarters in Qing cities was intended to segregate semi-artificial ethnic groups. While not their intended purpose, Council housing in the United Kingdom has also established spatial boundaries drawn on ethnic lines. Institutional and endemic racism has confined those of non-white backgrounds to a lower socio-economic class, meaning that they are more likely to need social housing. Spatial planning was also an instrument in the imperial toolkit of the Ottoman and Russian empires. Ethnicity, gender, and status were all factors that informed their imagining of difference and, consequently, their management of it through space. Similarly, council housing addresses a specific imagining of difference in British society, economic class. Empires throughout history have addressed difference through the allocation of space and habitation. It would seem that modern-day Britain is no exception.